I'm Steve Marion, and welcome to Digital Dialogues. Today, I have a wonderful guest, Henry Piarrot, the General Manager of Newport Hospitality Group. Henry, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Glad to hear it, and it's my pleasure to have you. And let's just go ahead and jump right into it, Henry. Where are you from? Where'd you get your start?
My hometown is New Orleans. So I grew up working in the hotels in New Orleans when I was 15.
Wow. All right. So an early start nonetheless. You've led turnarounds, new openings, and regional operations. What's been the most defining moment of your career so far, and why?
That's a good question. Mining to me is the satisfaction of how the team does on the other end. For example, I had a hotel in North Dakota a few years ago. I'll use that as an example. And the manager at that hotel had been there a long time. And ownership was not happy and wanted to find another manager. So they sent me there to work with. And she was an excellent young lady. And she had a team that was new, but every time somebody got behind or in trouble or wasn't sure what to do, that's okay, I got you. And then she would do it herself or attempt. And consequently, over time, she just buried herself up to her earlobes in everybody's paperwork and from crew schedules to housekeeping reports, everything. She was helping her people work on making the department head stronger and more accountable for their responsibilities. And once that started happening, they started growing. They got stronger. And they had their quality evaluation up, and they had been struggling on those in the past. But I left her after about 3 weeks of working at the hotel with her. And then their evaluation came up maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I had left, and they scored a 98. It's far beyond what anybody expected of them, and they were all so proud.
Wow.
There's no drug, there's no alcohol, there's no aphrodisiac that will ever replace what it feels like to know you're badass.
Yes, yes. How about that?
And knowing that all of those people went to bed that night after they accomplished that made me feel good.
Nice, very nice story. You speak about training our eyes. Can you unpack what that means in the context of hospitality facilities and guest experience?
When I was younger, there was a term that our managers would use. They would call it store blind, the nick on the wall, the scratch on the molding. You walk through any business, regardless of what it is, and there's always these little nicks and knacks and breaks and tears and marks on the wallpaper. And we just eventually don't see it anymore because we just keep walking. And we have to train our eyes to know what unacceptable looks like, that when we see it, we address it right away. And we don't get so used to it being there that we stop seeing it anymore. So that's what I mean about training our eyes. I worked for a man when I was younger. His big deal was, he says, in order to be good at this, you have to have eyesight and initiative. You can't see it, you can't help your team. And if you see it and you don't do anything about it, you can't help it. You can have those two things before you can have anything else. And so training our eyes is, you start at the curb, you're the guest, you're pulling in the arrival experience. You have to focus your eyes on what is this guest seeing as they come into your building, your team, as they look at the furniture or your handprints. When the sun comes in through the windows in the afternoon, you no longer have any secrets. And you have to look at your property every day as the guest, not the manager, not the desk clerk. What is the guest going to see? And that's what I mean by training our eyes.
Very interesting perspective, which actually brings me to my next question, which I'm sure you'll have great insights about. What do you believe separates a good hotel leader from a truly great one?
That's a good question. I'm sure there's about 8,000 videos on YouTube that will give you about 7,000 different versions of that answer. I believe that leaders sacrifice their comfort for their team, and managers sacrifice their team for their. If my team knows that I have their best interest at heart and that their success is my success, when I raise the bar, they want to go, they want to grow, They want to become something more than they are. They want to be better at what they're doing tomorrow than they were yesterday. If they believe that what I want them to do, because I want to ensure I get my next bonus, they're not going to care. My teams do not work for me. Now, if you're not smart enough to understand my responsibility as the general manager, then you're probably not smart enough to work here. But bosses get fired, teachers get promoted. I work for my team. When I hire somebody, my commitment to them is that if you come here, I will do everything I can to help you get where you're trying to go. No different than a sports team. The coaches aren't kicking any field goals, they're not throwing any passes, but they get a ring too.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, from your experience managing properties across multiple states, how do you geographically disperse teams?
I've found that in the last 12 years or so, I've been in 10 states and two countries, from upstate to New York to Wisconsin, North Dakota, and then, of course, Florida, Mississippi, Kentucky, just a few. And now I'm in South Carolina now. I find there's very little difference in the people who do what we do for a living. They all work hard for money and they kill for recognition. What gets them out of bed in the morning, because we all work when we don't feel good, but what gets them out of bed in the morning is to make a better life for themselves and their children. Everybody has their own why. Whether you're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi or Green Bay, Wisconsin, everybody has their own. And I want to know what your why is, whether you're the housekeeping room attendant or if you're the restaurant server or whether you're the catering manager. I want to know what your why is because I can't help you if I don't know what your why is. And at the same time, I am using your why to get you where you're going because you're not doing anything for me. You're here for your why.
Yes.
So, yeah, some people put pickles in their Bloody Marys and some people don't. But everybody's trying to make a better life for their family.
Yes, they are. Yes, we are. How has your approach to preventive maintenance evolved over the years?
As I've gotten older, I have embraced the definition of maintenance. Most young managers believe that the maintenance man is the guy who fixes things, right? Toilets clogged, shower heads leaking, vacuum cleaners broken. Maintenance man job is not solely to do those things, though surely those are simple things that they do during the course of a day. The definition of maintenance is to maintain the equipment, constantly checking it every day, kind of like watering your plants. If you don't water your plants, die.
Yeah.
Don't make sure that your equipment is constantly clean. Ice machines in hotels are a perfect example. You start filling up your ice bucket, you're a guest, and you notice these little black chips that's on the ice, right? Nobody cleaned the ice machine, and now it's growing mold on the cube maker. My view of maintenance is that my job is to do the best I can to keep it maintained so that I have to repair it because the cost of maintenance is a fraction of the cost of repair or replace. Everybody has their own system for doing it. Someone uses this software, someone uses that software, and they'll do it in a notebook and a binder. But keeping things on schedule and making sure that you're and loving it, just like the plants, your job is to keep it healthy and alive.
That's right. That's right. So, Henry, can you share, and that's a great point, can you share an example where facilities operations directly impacted the guest experience for better or for worse?
I mentioned Wisconsin earlier. I had gone to a town very close to Green Bay a few years ago to do a task force. They had lost their manager, and I was familiar with the company. And I went up there for 90 days until they could find someone to take over the property. And when I got there, property was dirty, crew was demoralized. There wasn't any leadership, and what leadership there was always negative. The AGM I inherited, without getting too personal, only saw what their people were not, and we're all not something. However, to get back onto the question, because I'm drifting, this place was full of windows. It had an indoor pool, for example, surrounded in glass. This was really a very nice property. It was a Hilton property. Our first project was to do something that made an impact right away and immediately. and we cleaned the windows. It had been so long since somebody cleaned the windows around the pool that you couldn't see the pool unless you pushed your face up against the glass to look in.
Sure. Wow.
And we spent a week, and it just transformed the hotel. Took 10 years off the age of it. And the attitude of the team, like it got their attention too, because it was like they weren't driving into this unkept place every morning. You're not only trying to impress, but you have to do things in such a way that your team impresses themselves, because winning isn't always the touchdown. Sometimes it's the first down. That at that hotel, we made such a great impact because I handed the keys to the manager that they hired. Out of a 45 person crew, approximately, I lost two people
Hmm.
during that 90 days. But you would have thought I replaced the whole crew
Wow.
because we gave ourselves a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Henry, in the short time that we've known each other, I've gathered a good bit about you. And so, my next question, I almost feel like I could answer for you, but I'd much rather hear your answer. In your management philosophy, how do you create a sense of ownership and pride in frontline maintenance and housekeeping teams?
That's a great question. Opportunity and accountability. Giving you the opportunity to display what you can do and the accountability to not let you. Because the training, the accountability is what makes the training. If there's no accountability, then there's no guardrails. But the whole point is putting people in a position to show what they can do and then holding them accountable to their why so that they do.
Yes. You talk about personnel, you talk about human capital, the people who work for you that don't work for you because you work for them. How do you identify talent during hiring that aligns with your culture of high expectations and hospitality?
Number one, you have to build a team. When you go to these properties, if you're lucky, you have most of the people who are already there that can become your team. But if you don't, you have to build a team. Gosh, if I'm good at anything, that is what I think I am best at. But because I can explain how to do it to people, they think it's easy, and it is not. I hire the heart and train the brain. A lot of
Okay.
times, some of the most experienced people already know everything and they're not coachable anymore. For example, at this property, I've turned over the entire staff at this property with the exception of maybe five people. And not everybody makes it. No one hires 100%. And if I'm right 6 out of 10 times, I'm building a team. If I'm right 3 out of 10 times, I'm treading water, just trying to stay afloat because the turnover creates the instability and you can't build anything on sand. I try, for example, at this property, I hired one of the desk associates, never worked in a hotel before, just tax accountant, right? She brings a lot to the table in regards of attention to detail and understanding what keeping the boxes in the right place look like.
Sure.
But there's still a lot to learn. You're changing professions, but great student. She's doing very well. She's working on her own. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for somebody who has a heart for people. We call it a high HQ, hospitality quotient. If you find pleasure in making somebody smile, that's what we're looking for. We can teach you all. The rest of it's a few videos, some training class, working with your coworkers, attention to your department head. But I can't teach you to enjoy other people. And in an interview, when somebody wants a job, they'll tell you everything they think you want to hear. So you never really know you're right until after they've already started.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, hiring is definitely an art, I think, more than a science. You can put all sorts of metrics behind it, and I'm sure that somebody out there can come up with some statistical data that shows you how to get it right. But at the end of the day, it is an art form. And hearing you speak about hiring people and, from the heart, that's definitely the type of leadership that I would look for if I were looking for employment. You've written about history, culture, and leadership. How do these broader reflections influence the way you manage hotel operations today?
My favorite book I've ever read is Grant's memoirs. And people go, what? Anyone who hasn't read that book, I trust by the time you get halfway through the second page, you'll hate putting it down. I look at it when the guest and the ownership are happy, it's my team's fault. When the guest and the ownership are unhappy, it's mine. And what does that have to do with Grant's memoirs? He was so focused on making sure that he had his people's backs. Every success belonged to the team, and every failure belonged to him personally. And that's important to me in any team situation because you have to own it. And I talk to my leadership teams, for example, the department heads, they're not GMs yet. They're learning how to run parts of the business. They learn to run the whole business. And I'll tell my desk manager, for example, when something goes sideways, don't come in here and throw your desk clerk on my desk. Explain to me what happened and how you're going to correct it. I don't care whose fault it is. Now you go out there and deal with whoever it is that you need to deal with. It's like in housekeeping. Who cleans them? I want to know who inspected it. It's never the team's fault. And history, as I guess you frame the question, bears that out over and over. The more I read history, the more I am convinced that's a philosophy.
Mm.
History makes you clairvoyant, and the people who have been the most successful are the people who have lived that far.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. Not clairvoyant. I think the closest thing I have to clairvoyancy would be ESPN.
Well, I mean, for example, when you're trying to figure out what your business is going to do next year, what's the first thing you look at? Last year.
Last year, yeah.
And when you're up against trying to solve a problem or create a program, the first thing I look for is who had this problem before and what did they do? And a lot
Mhm.
of times, even if I didn't learn what they did that worked, I learned what they did that didn't work too.
Right. Definitely something to be said for that. So, Henry, if you were speaking to the next generation of hospitality leaders, what would you say about the real responsibilities that come with managing the physical environment of a guest-centric business?
Building that great team. I'm absolutely convinced that every good thing that happens in our profession is because good people cared about what they were doing and made it happen. And though bad things happen to good people, sometimes most bad things happen as a result of apathy. A small example, which to me is a big example because I share this story over and over again, almost in every interview. I was making rounds, and this is probably 10, 12 years ago, making rounds, and I see one of the room attendants come out of the hotel room, and you know how the carts in the hallway.
Yeah.
She comes out. Her name was Susie. I said, Susie, what's wrong? And she looks up at me. She's sweating. She goes, I don't feel so good, Mr. Henry. And I said, well, why are you here? She obviously had the flu or something. Why are you here? You should be home. And she didn't even stop and think about it. She looked right at me and she said, my sisters would have had too many rooms to clean if I stayed home. I sent her home. As a matter of fact,
Hmm.
I took her home. But that's what makes everything. You've got to get the me out of your building and replace it with we.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And kudos to you for being that kind of leader to be able to identify the fact that she was not well and then showing the ultimate humanity in taking her home.
Let's just say because of her sacrifice, her sisters were happy in the rooms that she could not clean.
Yes.
Nobody complained when we split up her board among the other people because she was thinking of them first and they knew it, so they were happy to help. In our profession, how many times does somebody call out or this isn't for me and walk out and the rooms still need to be clean? They're already sold and everybody's because you're trying to get them to do more. And that's the we versus me.
Yes. Yes.
You, you
Powerful.
you can beat me all day long, but you're gonna have a hard time beating all of us.
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you just said about the ladies splitting up their rooms and everything. My mother was a housekeeper for 20 plus years at the Holiday Inn in Philadelphia. And I remember the stories that she would tell me. I remember the long days when multiple people were out and they had to step it up, work late to get those rooms cleaned.
And it takes days for their bodies to recover after that because being a hotel housekeeper is very hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I tell you what, Henry Piarrot, it has been my great pleasure to have you as a guest on Digital Dialogues. And just for the audience, this is, I guess I should have called it the Men in Black edition of Digital Dialogues. No, this was not planned, ladies and gentlemen. It was just happenstance. But thank you so much, Henry. It's been, again, a great pleasure to have you on Digital Dialogues. My goodness, we might have to do this again sometime.
You've been very kind, Stephen.
Thank you, sir. It's been a great pleasure. Hello.